Welcome to the Fast Cat Podcast. I'm your host, Frank Overton. Some call me the Big Cat. And as always, I'm joined by Jackson Long.
Hello.
In the house.
In the house.
How are you?
I'm very good. I'm tired. I did a big adventure yesterday, but recovering. And I'm super excited to talk about my hometown race.
Rebecca's Private Idaho. That's right, folks. We are podcasting about the RPI this week. And I've never done it. I would like to do it. And Jackson's done it 4 times.
Yeah, I think 4 times, 3 or 4 times. It's actually it's a pretty relatively new race, but I mean, obviously, I love going back home and doing it. It's a good event, and I mean, where I grew up in Sun Valley, we never had any big races. So it's been cool to have this because it's the same experience, I'm sure, as a lot of these gravel races that are in small towns. It changes the whole community that weekend, and everyone's psyched, and so. Yeah, it's a great race, and I have a lot of experience and have suffered greatly at this. So
Fantastic. Well, I look forward to hearing all about it from you. And it kind of reminds me of like when the U.S. Pro Cycling Challenge came to Boulder, or the Oat Route started in Boulder. I mean, those were great days. So
yeah.
I can totally relate to what you're feeling in your hometown.
Yeah, and it's always fun to you see all your friends from Boulder, other places that come out, and you're like, yeah, this is my town, and like show them this your favorite lunch spot or your favorite little ride or something, and so
bagel shop.
Yeah, it's fun, and it's just like a good weekend. Labor Day, it's a beautiful time of year, and Rebecca does an awesome job of organizing, and it's a great course, and so I highly recommend it for anyone that is interested in the gravel stuff. And I mean, as we'll talk about, it's a pretty standard gravel race with some key sections, but it's still super hard, and you have to be prepared. And our goal here is like what we did with the Crusher last year, Steamboat Gravel this year, is kind of just break down the race into as much detail as possible so that you can be as best prepared for success, and just having that confidence going in, and from the course to the equipment to training. I think we're going to try and hit it all, so
yeah,
it'll be good.
Fantastic.
Before we get into it, though, of course, we have a few announcements to go over.
For sure. So let's see where to start. Should we do review of the week?
Let's do review of the week.
Okay, review of the week comes from Fatmore at yahoo.com, and he did the road intervals plan, and he says August 4th of this month, I signed up to this plan late April of 2019, early into my season. I couldn't have been more pleased with the results. The plan increased in intensity nicely, and it's the first time I've followed or stuck with a plan. 3/4 of the way through the plan, I won my first race, literally riding away from the field. Nice work. This was due to a sustained 5-minute VO2 effort, which I had built up to and knew I could hold during the training workouts. The results for me were: won a race, moved up a race license category, numerous power personal bests, and an increase in FTP of 5 watts. So congrats.
Awesome.
All right. And as a reminder, we will extend to you 1 month of our coaching subscription, a $39 value, which includes training plan revisions and power data review from our exclusive VIP coaching subscription forum.
Sweet.
Nice work. What other announcements do we have?
In case you want to get a little bit more of a visual representation of this kind of podcast, I shot a little short video of some of the main sections of the course when I was out in Idaho, so you can get a little bit of a taste of what it looks like, I could talk about the climb, I kind of break it down a little bit, show some of the gravel and stuff like that, and so I'm definitely a visual person. I like to see video, so I think it's super helpful, and I'll put that in the show notes as well of this episode, so we'll have a whole Rebecca's Private Idaho training tip /podcast/video post on the website, so be sure to check that out.
Yeah. I mean, it's on our YouTube channel. Subscribe and like, as they all say, but it's a 7-minute video. Jackson walks you through the visual parts of what we're going to actually podcast about today. So check that out and let us know if you have any questions.
What are these things, huh?
Yeah. So I want to tell you guys about these ice legs. This is Phil Gaiman's new invention, and he sent these to me the other day to try out and maybe tell you guys about. But ice legs are these sleeves you put over your legs, kind of like the Normatex. And in these pouches in the back, you take the ice packs that are included. Ours are in the freezer right now. You put them in here, and then so it's a cold therapy. And I used those the other day, and for about 15 minutes after a really hot ride, felt quite nice. So yeah, thanks, Phil. And everyone, I guess we should we could give a quick Phil update. He did his second ride yesterday, over 10,000 feet of climbing around Malibu. He said he killed everyone, but around 3.5 hours, he could really feel his endurance suffering. So he's going to the tour of Utah to do Cookie Corner. I'm not sure if he's going to go for a KOM. Haven't talked to him about that yet. And Hill Climb Worlds is in Santa Barbara, September 21st, and our hill climbing interval plan starts this weekend. So if you're getting ready for Hill Climb Worlds or just want to climb faster overall in general, get on our 6-week hill climbing intervals plan.
Nice.
Yeah. Last announcement I would say would be we have a cyclocross run workout video that we shot at Valmont Bike Park, the 5280 stairs this past week. So look for that. And thank you to all the new training plan athletes that are on our 6 weeks to cyclocross training plan that we podcasted about last week. Yeah, always gratifying and grateful for all the athletes that put their trust and faith in us to follow to FTFP and use to prepare for their cyclocross season. Thank you.
Yeah, speaking of podcasts, actually, just a quick thing that just came to mind is I think next week we're going to do a Q&A podcast episode.
Yes.
So it's been a little bit of a while since we've done the Q&A. So if you have any questions that you'd like us to answer on the show, I mean, it's going to be an entire episode dedicated to listener questions.
Yes.
Send us an email to info@fastcatcoaching.com. Post in the forum. I will post a little, Q&A or question fielding post thread in the forum this week. So start thinking of some good questions. We'd love to hear, what you're looking after, from training to racing to equipment to nutrition, whatever kind of comes to mind. There's a lot of stuff we could talk about. So. This is your chance to get some, firsthand experience from us nerds.
Yeah. No question is a bad question. They say the only bad question is the one that you don't ask. And to be honest, we actually don't field that many questions. So yeah, get off your horse and type his one out. We'll put it out there on the socials, I'm sure, next week. But really, forum, help at, or in the show notes here. And we'd love to answer your question specifically. And then, in the past 3 weeks, we've done Strava vols, Steamboat, what else? Cyclocross. Yeah. So those are 3 broad subjects. I mean, it could be mountain biking, could be time trialing. Oh, one thing I want to mention before we get into the show is Masters Nationals started this morning. And I have an athlete racing the time trial right now. He should be finished in about 10 minutes, give or take. So sending speedy vibes to Gary right now. Yeah.
When's the road race?
Road race is tomorrow and Saturday, I believe, and it takes place at the Air Force Academy, and it is on the 1986 World Championship road race course. So world-class road race course. It's the one. Do you remember you won that?
Yeah, I was just about to say.
You guys, when we did a collegiate race down at Air Force, Jackson broke away from the field and soloed to win. That was a great day.
Great moment.
Your dad was there too. I remember texting him because we were on different parts of the course.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
such a cool course.
So it's punchy climbs, VO2 laden, and the course is flat only in one spot. Other than that, it's really easy to attack but difficult to get away. But it's kind of like an Ardennes Classic where the climbs are additive and cumulative. And over the course of this, it's like a 5-6 mile lap, but you do it like, 10 plus or more times. The next thing you know, you're like 6,000-7,000 feet of climbing into it, and all VO2. So yeah, it's definitely a selective course, and it should be interesting to see all the beasts that win this week.
Sweet.
Cool. All right.
Well, let's talk gravel. So again, we're kind of, the whole focus here is to sort of break down the course and kind of the main considerations of Rebecca's, just so that you can kind of come in a little bit more prepared, a little bit more just ready and confident. Because the thing about a lot of these gravel races is that all the courses are so different. All the gravel, itself is so different. Mm-hmm. The terrain and, the equipment and all of that is so different. And so it can be kind of overwhelming, I think, for a lot of people going into these different races. It'd be like, oh, well, like, what bike should I use? What tire should I use? Mm-hmm. How do I train for this race or this race? And so we're trying to just sort of help to, clear that up a little bit.
The gravel is... what we're going to talk about is there's going to be a lot of elements where you need to be a roadie to deploy your race tactic properly. And then there's going to, in terms of the course, there's going to be a lot of elements where you need to be a mountain biker in terms of equipment selection and just the gravel we'll talk about. And that reminds me, like, roadies, we go to road races, crits, there's not as much emphasis on knowing the course. It's just like, it's asphalt. It's like everyone has one wheel set and all that. And then gravel, it's like you got different tire choices, equipment setup. So it takes everything from road and mountain and it's cool. I mean, that's what's so fun about it, is there's a lot of elements, a lot of factors, and it's not always just about the strongest person that wins. So I think kind of to start, I think a good place to start is to kind of talk about the course itself. It's a pretty standard, I would say, run-of-the-mill gravel course. Starts in the beautiful town of Ketchum, Idaho. Actually, it starts, like, where the start is probably less than a mile from the exact location that I was born. So there used to be a is that like the general hospital?
No, so there actually used to be a hospital in the resort of Sun Valley. So Sun Valley, so there's like, it's kind of this big valley. There's a few little towns. Ketchum is kind of the main town of like where the ski area is, and then Sun Valley is the resort. And there used to be a hospital in there. That's where I was born. And so this the race starts on Sun Valley Road. So it's
taking you back to your roots.
Back to the roots. That's pretty cool. But yeah, so it starts in Ketchum, and it's pretty it's neutral rollout essentially, because it starts right on the outskirts of town, and it's paved for like the first couple of miles on just this road called Trail Creek, which is heading out towards the big first climb of the day, because you climb up over this summit and then drop down into you can kind of see this basin, which eventually turns into the Copper Basin, which is kind of that big lollipop loop.
Sorry to interrupt. This is Jackson's Training Peaks file from the baked potato last year. We'll reference this. This is the course GPS, the elevation profile. This is heart rate. This is miles per hour. 4 hours, 49 minutes. 89 miles. So we'll reference this for the video version here. And
yeah, just to clarify too, the course is slightly different this year from what you'll see on the Training Peaks and the Strava file, which we'll pull up as well. This year is they extended it, so now it's 100 miles. There's this extra little kind of out and back section to Wild Horse Campground basically, and then they are running the Copper Basin loop clockwise this year instead of counterclockwise, which I'll talk about.
It's right here.
So
last year y'all went this way.
Yeah. And it doesn't change a whole lot, but definitely still going to be hard, fast. But yeah. So like I said, it starts a few miles neutral from the get-go on pavement. Everyone's just kind of at this point, like at least the last few years. I mean, the thing about Idaho is it's cold and dark in the mornings there. We're a little bit more north of Colorado. And so like it's freezing cold at the start. And
like 35 degrees freezing?
no, like, I mean, I wonder if you can see the temperature. Can you see that?
Yeah, here, actually.
But it's like I was in arm warmers and a vest and stuff at the beginning.
39 degrees.
Yeah.
Went down to 34. Good gosh.
Yeah, so it's chilly. It's very chilly.
What did you?
I was shivering, and so I had I think
What did you wear to start?
arm warmers and a vest, and
And then the temperature got up to, looks like 68, and
then up over here is
82.
yeah.
by
So it's a
the
pretty
finish.
big like differential.
40
Yeah.
mile, 40 degree difference.
So you have to be prepared for that. And so the thing about the start is that it's cold, like obviously, and so you're kind of riding out. It's still a little bit, like early morning. Everyone's kind of chatting, and so you're going slow. And this is a key thing here because you're basically kind of rolling out chill on this like pretty, kind of gradual uphill paved section, and then you hit the climb. And so warm up is kind of important.
You get like what? It's Joe Rogan.
It's Joe Rogan just in your pocket. Yeah. So what is that?
That was
So it's
28 minutes.
yeah. So you get like a little bit of warm up, but I remember not being super warmed up because it's still, average probably
30. You're in the
38
30s.
degrees,
Yeah.
for that section. And so you just don't want to go into that climb super freezing cold because it kind of starts off the bat, and that's where the fireworks start to go.
Dang, you went up to 185 heart rate midway up the climb.
Which is not actually that high for me.
Oh.
But
these young kids.
I know, these kids these days. But yeah, so this is kind of the key section. And if you take anything out of this podcast or out of the discussion of this course, this is the time that you should stop what you're doing and focus and pay attention to what we're talking about here, because this climb, you basically do it twice throughout the race because it's kind of an out and back lollipop, is Trail Creek Summit. And it starts off the first I think it looks like 1.3 miles is paved, and it's not that steep. It's just like it's pretty chill, but then you hit the gravel, and the gravel is it's pretty packed, but it's chunky, and so there's a good and there's a bad line. There's a lot of rocks.
It's probably where your average speed goes way down.
Yeah, exactly.
Right
And so what happens here is that groups form, of course, and people are going super hard because it's super important to go over the top of this climb with a group, a good group, a group that you can hang with, and be a group that is likely to work and ride well, because you crest the top of the climb. And if you go back to the Strava file, the full climb is, what is it? What's the length of it?
4.1 miles,
Yeah, so-
6% grade.
So 4 miles, it's about a 30-minute climb. And so a lot of damage can be done in that time, especially right off the bat, because the group is big. You don't want to be starting the climb in the back. I mean, they let everyone go together, all the baked potato people. And so,
How many people usually are there? Like 500?
yeah, I think there's probably like 500 people signed up for the baked potato right now.
So it's a large group rolling out.
It's a big group.
Yeah.
And so it's easy to kind of get into the mode of like when you're rolling out neutral, it's cold, you're chatting with your friends. It's easy to like forget that, the time goes past, and then pretty soon you're right there at the climb. So start moving up, start, being in that front third, if you can, because once the climb hits, it's a pretty narrow road, especially the gravel section. It's hard to move up, because you basically hit the top of the climb, and there's an aid station there, which I don't really recommend.
Skip it.
Like, I've never stopped for a bottle or taken a bottle there. I mean, if you're feeling like you need it, or if it's exceptionally warm this year, you can grab a bottle and just take a sip and chuck it. But it's pretty fast ripping descent on gravel down the other side. It's pretty straight. There's not a lot of corners, and you can see it.
You hit 42 miles an hour coming off the,
Yeah, it's super
top.
fast. And
Yeah.
it's the same kind of general kind of gravel quality. Like there's a lot of rocks. You have to be mindful about your line, and there's big, what do they call them, baby heads or whatever.
Baby heads.
Yeah, and so there, you just have to be careful of your line, especially if you're in a group and you're trying to like stick around, because it's just like straight and fast. And if you watch the video I made, I have some GoPro footage of that. But you want to be in a group here, because once you hit the bottom, it's a little bit deceptive on the Training Peaks file, because
This is only a negative 1.7%.
and how long does
grade.
that take? It's
That took you 20 minutes.
so that's definitely not the entire descent.
Yeah.
Like the climb descent, because
Look at your average speed.
yeah.
30 miles an hour.
Yeah, it's fast.
Yeah.
It's fast. And then because if you look at it here, I don't know if they have the descent on the
Yeah. Keep maybe scrolling down.
so I doubt that they have the full
There we
descent.
go.
But basically, so you come off the descent off the top of the climb, and then it quickly goes into this kind of 10-mile section, which is basically net downhill, as you can see from this.
20 minutes.
It's
Yeah.
and it's super fast. It's but if you're just by yourself and in no man's land, you can lose a ton of time, because at least every time I've done it, the group works together pretty well. They're wanting to recover a bit after the climb, but by pacelining and working well. And this is where, like you mentioned, being a roadie comes into play, because what happens is a lot of times, and this happened to me one of my first years of doing it, and it really frustrated me because I was still racing road at the time. There was some clearly mountain bike racers in there just getting on the, like, we were pacelining, and they would get on the front and do the classic, like, smash it, let a huge gap open, and just disrupt the whole flow of the pace line. And so you have to be able to use those road racing skills in this circumstance, because you can roll really fast while still recovering, still make up a lot of time. And at this point in the race, there's like a bunch of different groups already. And so, but at the same time, if you go too hard up the climb and you get into a group that's a little bit too hard for you, you could pay for it later. I've been there, I've done that, and it sucks. And you can get caught again by a different group. And so what happened last year was I was kind of in one of the first groups on the road going over the top of the climb. We chilled and took it easy. We even took a pee stop right there. I think you can see that.
Nice. Yeah, you can see the gap. I was going to ask you if that was an aid station.
Yeah, you can see the gap. We stopped and took a pee.
Who does that?
I don't know.
Huh.
It was, I mean, I had to pee super bad. So, but then it's like, you can see after that, I had to chase pretty hard. So there was, so that kind of, I paid for that a little bit, looking back at it. But then another group caught up to us, and so we had a big group. But just a little bit more about this kind of flat section is you're going to come back on this. And so it's really important to look at it, to remember it, because it's the most demoralizing 10-mile stretch ever on the way back, because it's always a headwind. And it's like, you can see, coming, you can basically see the climb, that you have to go back up, and if you're just by yourself, you're suffering.
This is that.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Okay.
And so what happens there is you're already cracked from the whole race, basically. And what happens is it's headwindy, it's a lot hotter, and it's pretty slow, because it's like gradual uphill. And as a result, it's mental, it's really difficult. You're tired, and then you have to hit the backside of that climb again before descending down into the finish. And so we'll talk about that. But if you can, you want to get into a group there, especially at the end, because I've been there by myself before, and it's demoralizing.
It helps pace you, keep you probably more concentrated on the effort than you probably could on your own.
Yeah.
Trying to hold wheels is going to be easier than being stuck in no man's land.
Yeah. Okay, so essentially what happens here is, and I'll come to the Strava, I guess, is that you come through, you do that kind of flat 10-mile section, and then you make this right-hand turn. And once you make this right-hand turn, you're heading out towards the Copper Basin, which is the main loop of the course. And the Copper Basin, when I rode it, and I talk about this in the video, when I rode it, it was in pretty bad shapes because there's a lot of these redneck golf carts, as I like to call them, that use these roads.
Yeah.
Those little
quads.
The quads.
Yeah.
And so they just basically turn these roads into like washboard city. And so it's just most of the course is it's rolling. This whole loop is pretty rolling. There's a few short punchy climbs, but I think like we were talking about before we started recording, the average speed is still pretty decent for this.
By and large, it looks like, with the exception of this climb, this is in between the descent to the climb and then when you circle back and do that, it's more or less, we're talking grade of 0.1. This is not very representative.
Yeah.
The y-axis in Training Peaks here is
Can you,
makes it looks like it's a lot of climbing. What do you want to look at?
Well, I wonder what this does. Smooth.
Do you want to zoom in on this section?
No, I just was saying, but it looks like I was averaging about 18 miles an hour.
Yeah.
So it's still really fast. It's pretty rolly, and
you want to be in a group.
You want to be in a group.
Yeah.
But it's also really hard on you because it's a really rough gravel section. It's packed down. It's not like loose, but it's just lots of rocks, lots of washboard, and I just remember like my arms.
Do you have front fork suspension?
No, I wish.
Would it be a good course for that?
I'm still not necessarily sold on the whole suspension on gravel bikes, but a lot of people I've seen there with those Lauf forks.
Yeah, the true grit or whatever.
Yeah. So I don't know. I've never ridden one, so I don't know. I could see
one.
it. I could see how it'd be nice. But I think having a bigger volume tire, running lower pressure tubeless, I think can be pretty.
What's your
beneficial.
tire choice for that?
So last year I ran a 38 mil Gravel King SK because I was doing the stage race, and you have to use the same tire and bike setup for all three stages. And we're not going to talk too much about the stage race because it's pretty small, and I can just mention quickly about it. But basically, stage one is essentially a mountain bike race, cross-country mountain bike race. And so you start up at this place called Galena, which has all these amazing single-track mountain bike trails. And you do all these crazy loops in the single track, and it's pretty smooth, flowy, kind of like primo single track. So you can ride it.
Grode.
It's premium grode single track, but I wanted to have a bigger tire because I'm not a super comfortable rider on that stuff. And so I think a 38 mil tire is probably a good bet for this year because of just how kind of rough it is. I'm going to be doing 35 this year.
I'm going to be doing 32 if I do it.
Yeah.
Because that's all I got.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which will be fine.
And didn't you say Josh
Barry,
won it on a 28
road
bike?
One of the first years of Rebecca's, Josh Barry, who's also a local to Sun Valley, won it on a road bike.
Okay.
So I don't know exactly what his tire was, but I think it was probably a 28, 25. So it's possible, but I don't recommend that because it would be pretty brutal. And so we did have a question.
Yeah, now that we're talking about tires and tire pressure, we did have a listener question, and he says he's doing the baked potato, and he's asking about wheel tire choice. And I think he's saying he ran 650B 47 Victorias for Lost and Found, which is a pretty mountain bikey course from what I understand. And then he's debating about 700C wheel set with 38 millimeter Schwalbe G1s. And based on what you just said, I think he wants to think in terms of 38 millimeter, his Schwalbe G1s.
Yeah, I would definitely not run a 650 because it's a very fast course. It's very rideable. There's never any, I guess if you're doing the stage race, it depends, but at least for the baked potato, what we're talking about today, it's basically a road racer's gravel course, because it's, rolling pretty, like there's nothing super technical. There's no like crazy corners or turns to be concerned about. That right-hand turn and subsequent left-hand turn to get back onto the straight section to the finish. It's really the only main turn of the course. But the only reason why I would say go with a 38 would be just comfort over these washboards and rough sections where you can especially do tubeless if you can.
Run the lower pressure.
Run a little bit of a lower pressure.
What pressure did you run last year?
I was probably on 40
psi.
Yeah.
But do you think you could go lower? Because tire pressure and volume of tire is all related, but also your body weight. So if you're a bigger guy, if you weigh 200 pounds, you need maybe 2 or 3 more psi. If you're, Egon Bernal, you don't need much at all.
Yeah, I mean, I might go a little bit lower. The only reason why I was running slightly higher with 40 is because of the climb from going out, is because a large section of it is paved and then it's still rideable, on the gravel, and so you want to be able to still roll pretty fast on there. But that's always a hard choice. It's a balance. I mean, everyone's so different. This year, like I said, I'm going to run the SKs again, 35 mil. I think that's like my favorite tire. So do that. But yeah, coming back just to finish up with the course, like I said, you go through the Copper Basin. They're doing it clockwise this year, but before you hit that this year, as we mentioned earlier, there's this little out and back, and it is slightly uphill out to this little campground. It doesn't go all the way out, but then you turn around. This is super rough as well, and it'll be fast coming back down. So it's just something to be aware of, is that a little bit after you take that right-hand turn, you're going to have to make another right-hand turn to go out to this out and back, and then back out. And so you just want to be just like in a long road race, you want to be as efficient as possible in the group. Don't take super hard pulls. Don't take as many pulls as a lot of other guys. Try and draft and save energy, and especially through this section here. There's probably an aid station right here at this junction. There might even be one here. Make sure you're eating and drinking, because it's going to be hot, and it's hot and dusty and dry. I mean, it's Idaho, high desert, so it's going to be dry. But yeah, and so you do this loop, the Copper Basin loop. It's stunning. There's amazing vistas of the Pioneer Mountains back there, and it's a really cool area. But so then you come back, and so once you finish this loop, you come back and it's fast, and once you make that left-hand turn, this is the 10-mile death march from hell. So just be prepared for that. Because
it reminds me of the Col de Crusher, where you go down it and then you got to go back up it.
Yeah, it's totally like that. I mean, it's just a different kind of effort, but it's so long, and even when my dad and I rode it a couple weeks ago and I filmed that video, we were both just we didn't even do the full course, but we just were riding back on that section, just not talking, because we're just just get me home,
in the zone.
Because then you have to come back up over the climb, and so the second KOM, which is, let's see here,
the way back.
So it's a lot shorter. So it's not a lot shorter. It's 3.8 miles, but it's less steep. It's over a lot faster.
Percent grade is 2%.
Yeah, so it's
instead of 6.
So it's like an 18-minute effort versus a 30-minute effort. Some of these guys went pretty fast last year. I was suffering going slowly up it. But you have to get up over this as well. And if you're in a group, it's tricky, because then you have this crazy descent.
Crazy fast?
Yeah. It's a lot more technical than the first time up, the first descent, because it's like the Col de Crush, where you'll see it, because you'll ride up it, at the beginning, you'll ride up it. So you'll at least be prepared for what the descent's going to look like. But yeah, it's like a really narrow road, pretty sheer drop off. So you don't want to case it and lose it off the side of the mountain. But you're kind of twisting around the mountain, pretty bumpy and stuff. and then you hit the pavement at about 3 or 4 miles, and then you're rolling back down that paved sections, like slight net downhill. And this is a tough part because if you're in a group, you know, like, or if you're by yourself, you could get caught by people because it's, you know, you're on gravel tires on pavement, kind of net downhill. It's like a pedal descent.
Pedaling descent. Mm-hmm.
And so I think what happened last year is, I don't remember if it came down to a sprint, but there was definitely like a few groups on the road getting caught and catching and attacking because, you know, it's this like end of the race and everyone's pretty gassed, but it's fast and
right.
You're on this, you know, paved section. And so just important to be still saving a little bit of energy for that section, because you could also lose a lot of time there if you're just dying over the climb and cruising in by yourself, for example. So
hopefully after 100 miles, you've already established your finishing order. You don't have to.
True, and that's what usually
duke it
happens.
out.
That's I mean, unless you're in the running for the win.
Have you seen that 40 plus memes? He's like, "This is what sprinting for 50th place in the state road race championship looks like."
No.
So, you know, obviously, if you're going for an age group win or a win, you need to be on it. But if you're rolling in for 200th place, just roll in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
So that's basically the course. I mean, it's 100 miles, and you know, it's not a ton of climbing. It's probably like 6,000 feet in total. 5,500 feet of climbing. So it's not a terrible amount of climbing, but it's pretty much bookended in those two main sections. And so the key component here, which will just kind of like broken record it, is to be prepared for that climb at the beginning and you know, kind of dig deep to get into a good group.
Because that's a 1,300 foot climb, and it's like a 30-minute effort. That's pretty long. I mean,
and I highly recommend people that are coming in for Rebecca's to go ride it the day before, so you can at least get a sense of what it's going to look like. It's not a particularly hard climb or steep. You know, it's
6%.
6% average, and so, but it's pretty slow on the gravel section, and so go ride it. We also recommend, like we talked about in the Strava Vols episode, is starring it, that section on your Wahoo, so you can see how much, you know, how much you have left in the.
Yeah, this is what we podcasted. Was that 2 weeks ago? Yeah. Strava Vols. Like, what we're talking about is come over here if you're following along on the video. Star this bad boy right here, and then sync that with your Garmin or your Bolt, and then guess what? You'll know during the race. You'll know how many. It'll give you an estimated time to finish. It'll work backwards using GPS data and just like this point right here. But it'll literally say, okay, you've traveled 3.7 miles. You have 4 more minutes to the top, which is enormous when you're suffering. And in the context of what we're recommending, when you need to hang on to that wheel so you can make a good group here. Yeah. So when you're like this far up, it's really nice to know how much further you have to go, because presumably you're kind of at your limit or maybe a tad over. So yeah, definitely use the Strava starred segments, and maybe along those lines.
I mean, you could do
the way back.
Yeah, you could do the second part of the climb. You could also do the Copper Basin loop.
This one.
But yeah, I mean, it's really all about tactics in terms of drafting and being in a good group. And
Copper Basin loop right here. Yeah.
I mean, it's about an hour or so. But pretty fast. I mean, again, like it's a really fast race, really fast course. And so, I do remember it being pretty tough to eat. And so maybe we can switch to equipment and kind of nutrition considerations here. It's hard to eat on this course because it's so rough and bumpy.
Gels.
Yeah. And so I remember trying to eat waffles when I was on this, and I was like choking. So this year I'm probably not going to do that. But the untapped gels were a game changer for me.
Untapped maple. Yeah. The viscosity is perfect.
Yeah.
But really any gels are due, so whatever you've been using.
Yeah, I think this race is sponsored by Goo, and so they have tons of Goos at the aid stations, but I didn't stop at any aid station. I mean, I just got bottle hand-ups and took all my nutrition with me.
It sounds like you're talking about a lot of one-handed nutrition, not two-handed nutrition, which is what the bars tend to be. And what I've been doing lately, I did this yesterday on my group route. It took 10 seconds. But if you take a sleeve of the Goo blocks, they come in those, it looks like a sleeve, and there's 8 per serving. I'm sorry, there's 2 servings per pack. So 8 blocks, 4 blocks is a serving. What I'll do before I ride, take a piece of scissors and just cut in half. So now you got two packets with their pre-opened, and there's 1 serving per packet. Put those in your jersey pocket facing up, and that it literally, you reach back in, and it just goes right in your mouth, and that takes all of like 10 seconds. So maybe that would be a good recommendation in addition to the gels, but still every 30 minutes.
Yeah, and I mean, liquid hydration or nutrition, if you're if you've been experimenting with that, can also be super helpful, because you're going to be drinking a lot anyway, and so if you can get some extra calories in that way, I think that's pretty huge. It's going to be around a 5-hour race, probably longer, probably like 5.5 hours this year, if you're going quickly. So I mean, it's not crazy long. It's not like steamboat gravel length, but it's still
100 miles is 100 miles.
Still a lot on gravel,
How many aid stations? Where are the aid stations on this?
So I don't know how it'll be this year. I mean, I'm sure that she has.
Because now I want to reference. So what we're getting, where I'm going with that is, you bring all your nutrition with you in your pockets every 30 minutes. But for hydration, if you start with 2 to 3 bottles, you need these feed zones. They're paramount.
Yeah, so I mean, I think there's probably, I remember there being like 3 aid stations probably. I'm guessing that there's going to be an aid station. Well, there's the one at the top of the climb. I think there's one like right after you take this right-hand turn onto this loop. There might even be one out here this year.
And are they hand up, or do you stop?
I mean, that you can do whatever you want. There's people with bottles handing out bottles, but you can also stop, which one year I did it with a couple of my friends and just chilled. And because the aid stations actually have really good food. They have like freshly baked Idaho potatoes.
Do they have French fries in the feed stations?
They might have French fries. I definitely remember they had like these huge vats of like olive oil baked Idaho potatoes with like rosemary and like really good. I mean, I'm
going to save that for the end if I do that.
Yeah, and so you can do that. But they have, and they also, of course, have gels and goos and stuff. And I think even last year I might have stopped.
Sponsored by Goo.
Yeah. I might have stopped for some goos last year because I was running out of food. But yeah, so there's going to be probably like 3 or 4 aid stations, I would guess. But I always err on the side of bringing my own stuff, just so you don't have to deal with that, because a lot of times you're just going too fast to stop, and you just want to get through it.
It's more efficient to take hand-ups and just keep going. And if you do need to stop, remember, it's like a Formula One pit stop. 8 seconds in and out, 1 foot down. Don't sit down.
Exactly.
Keep going. Yeah. Well, should we talk about, we kind of covered equipment, 35 millimeter, 40 PSI.
I think in terms of gear ratio, a standard, even a standard crank set is going to work 53, 39. I have a 50, 34, so compact with 1132 in the back. That seems to be fine.
So 34, 32.
Yeah. Because you want to have a good range going up the climb, but you also want to make sure you're not getting too spun out on some of the faster, descents and sections. But
one of the things I get a lot is double or single ring, because that's a thing in gravel. Like cyclocross, kind of
one by
SRAM kind of pioneered the one by, not kind of, but they did. And then so it works well with cyclocross because you don't do ginormous climbs in cross. But then it trickled over to gravel just for weight savings and efficiency. But it sounds to me like this is a double ring course.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think a one by would be the way to go for this. I can't really speak to it because I've never really ridden one by, but I've heard people. It seems like it's a mix, because it's like you can have more gears, but it's also like hard to find a perfect gear for some of the like flatter, faster. I mean, this is, like I said, it's basically a road race on dirt,
Yeah.
And so,
I mean, just look at Jackson's average speed here coming off of the first descent. It was, 30.1 miles an hour for 13 minutes. So you kind of need the big meat for that.
Yeah.
And if it's a pedaling and staying with a group, that's the disadvantage of a single ring. The advantage of the single ring is weight savings, and then you presumably you're going to have a big pie plate on the back, so you have a really good gear for this. But you give up a good gear for this. So,
but again, I mean, I wonder if you can see. Let's see, like.
I mean, you were 42 miles an hour coming off of the thing.
Can you see max gradient on here?
No. Training peak. Where is the steepest part? We'll see if we can see it.
Well, I mean, it doesn't matter, but I think it's again, it's not steep enough to really warrant having a pie plate.
Yeah, I mean, this is the final 7 minutes is 4.6%.
Yeah.
So, that's like, if you're making good watts, you can maybe still be in your 50.
Yeah.
That could be a big ring double. But yeah, I mean, if you're on a single setup and that's all you got, you just want to prepare to, you're going to be fine on the climb. And then you may need to just make sure you have an 11 on your cassette in the rear, and just plan on carrying a lot of momentum and spinning like a gerbil super fast here. And then you should be good the rest of the way here.
Yeah. I mean, and again, there's a lot of sections where you want to be efficient in the group with drafting, and also just getting aero, because getting in the drops, making yourself small. I think the guy who won it last year might have been on TT bars. He might have had aero bars. Yeah. So just things to consider is that this whole, I mean, especially this section, but even after you are coming back this section, and then you make that left turn, like it's all. I mean, I was going very slow. I was pretty cracked at this point, but you're going 20 miles an hour probably if you're rolling.
That's draftable.
That's draftable. That's also, you want to be efficient getting in the drops, cutting through the air a little bit faster, especially on this section is typically pretty headwindy, like I mentioned. So just be aware of that.
One thing that came to mind when you're talking about the rough gravel and what we podcasted about with the Steamboat gravel is do your foundations. Your back is going to take a beating. Every day, 12 minutes, work on a strong back. And then we were talking earlier, in the podcast about bring your road and your mountain bike skills. Mountain bikers that have a skill that most roadies don't. And what that is they will, when they're riding over rough terrain, they will unweight their saddle just a smidgen. It's not like they come, off the saddle, but they unweight it with their pedals, and that helps your back not absorb all these bumps. So when you're riding along and you see maybe like a larger section, you just kind of unweight a little bit with the way you pedal, and that will save your back a lot. But that and the foundations. And Jackson doesn't know about any of this because he's young and his back is like Gumby. But when you get like over 40 and
my back is definitely wrecked after some of these. I mean, Crusher last year my back was destroyed.
Back breaking.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is like 100 miles of this stuff, of this washboard, chunky gravel. If you're not super used to it, it's going to take a toll on your body, and it's going to fatigue you a lot more quickly than if you were riding the same amount on, smooth tarmac.
Yeah.
So
that kind of segues nicely into training for RPI. And, one of the reasons why we do recommend these long simulation rides over as close a terrain as you can find is to just put your body through those paces and feel what it's going to feel like. Kind of like the reason why I rode the Steamboat course a couple weeks ago is like I realized, wow, you really got to double down on your foundations and make sure your back is going to tolerate that.
Yeah. I mean, it's it's definitely like that's another, it's the whole thing about gravel is it's so multifactorial of like all these different factors that are playing into how you do. And the best rider isn't necessarily the most strongest, physiologically. It's the person that has chosen the best equipment for the day, has the best, efficiency in the group, et cetera, et cetera. So just the more you can control and do in preparation, which we'll talk about with training, the best you can do. So in terms of what we've talked about, I know you haven't ridden it, but you can get a pretty good sense. What are some of the key things that you would recommend in terms of training for this event?
Yeah, so if you break down the requirements, you need to be able to ride 100 miles, probably be able to spend 5 to 6 hours at once on the bike. And then beyond that, as you drill in on specificity, you want to be able to climb maximally. It's going to be 25 to 30 minutes, probably more like 30 minutes. So that's threshold power. Power to weight is important. And so what we're talking about, for those of you familiar with FTP, functional threshold power, that's your 60-minute power. So you need to be able to go higher than that, probably by 2 to 6%. You just need to be able to throw down for 30 minutes and then ride for 90 minutes after that.
Yeah.
Sounds hard, but in your simulation ride, go choose a route and drill it for 30 minutes and then ride for 4.5, 5 more hours until you hit 100 hours. So that's what you do on your Saturday simulation rides. During the week, you probably want to break down that 30-minute climb into 3 10-minute intervals. Go as hard as you can. You'd be well over your FTP power. So 3 by 10 minutes on, 5 to 10 minutes off, as hard as you can, the most wattage you can make, wattages that are greater than your FTP. You want to be able to do a TSS ride it's going to be over 300. Those are I would say the fundamentals of the training. And we covered this in our gravel podcast, but the 4 key elements of gravel training are the simulation rides, the sweet spot training, even though I just mentioned threshold climbing. This is unique to this special race.
But at the same time, looking at my data, I averaged 174 beats per minute. I didn't have power, but 174 beats per minute for the climb, which is
that sweet spot for you?
Sweet spot.
Yeah.
So
you weren't going full gas up
right.
it, but you were 185 at the top. So, but were you describe that in terms of on a scale of 1 to 10? 10 being the hardest, 1 being the easiest.
Yeah.
Where would you rate your climb in terms of perceived exertion?
You said 1 to 10, probably an 8.
Okay.
Because I knew, it's a tough thing because you are having to do this right off the bat.
Yeah.
And that there's all this super hard stuff to go. And so it wasn't like, I've done this race before and I was going to pull it up just to see. So in 2016, I did. I crashed that year.
How'd you crash?
First time riding a cyclocross / gravel bike.
Where on the course?
Was
it on this descent?
No, it was out in the Copper Basin.
Oh.
I, total noob, had a borrowed cyclocross bike and had no idea about tire pressure for gravel. I was just roadie. So I was I'll probably do 90 PSI.
Oh my God.
And so there was this horrible washboard section where I was losing control and I just hit someone's wheel and went down. But that year I did my best time up the climb. Oh, and I didn't have heart rate.
Sub 24 minutes. Nice.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
But I'm guessing I went a lot harder that year and I kind of learned from that mistake because
you paid for it
later.
Yeah.
And so you have to just gauge that effort. And I think that's what comes in with training is this is a pretty easy course to replicate in training unless you live in Florida. But because it's going to be at altitude. You max out at almost 7,000 or 8,000 feet.
Yeah.
So play around with going at different, intensities up a climb and then riding hard afterwards I'm going to probably do that this weekend in preparation for this and Steamboat Gravel is do a super hard gravel climb right off the bat or early on, and then try and keep a good pace rolling the rest of the ride, and you'll be able to tell pretty quickly like how you're responding to that.
Another note about how hard to go on this climb. We talk a lot about how you're feeling and power and heart rate, this and that. The other thing I would say is look around at who's around you. And if there's one of your frenemies that's 50 yards ahead of you and y'all are nearing the crest, and he's been a guy that, or she's been a guy that is strong, it would behoove you to go dig in and be up with them. And on the other hand, if you're having a great climb and then the guys and gals around you, they're way stronger, because like gravel, you're going to be lumped in with everyone.
Yeah.
There's pros down to everybody else. And so if you're up there with the pro guys, you've never gotten a result with them, you may be going a little bit too hard in over your head. Kind of sounds like what you were in was that 2013, 2016?
And I mean, I was with the front group that whole day basically, and I think I got like 13th or something. But yeah, I was going to mention that like there's no point or reason for making this climb a TT and going and getting out ahead of everyone else in your kind of range,
because they're going to mow you over.
Because they're going to just catch you on that flat section. And so it's like you have to play a little bit smart and just kind of like ride. Like if you find yourself in a good group that you're like, okay, these people look like I could ride with them, maybe some of them, and it looks like a good kind of crew that could roll pretty well through that kind of slight uphill section going into the Copper Basin. Just even if it feels easier than your max, it's probably smarter to save it for being for rolling through the rest of the course, so you can have a little bit of extra gas.
Yeah, and what Jackson's talking about is it does you, like when you're like right here, and it does you no tactical advantage to beat all the people you're in and around, and then for everyone else to catch you back like around here. Because when you go really hard here, that you're expending what we call your bullets, your matches, and it's unnecessary if they're going to catch you here. You could go less hard here, save it for this, what you were calling the death march grind here. And so Jackson's absolutely right. You kind of want to, if there's no reason to go as hard as you can and dig in and catch a good group, don't. And just kind of the holy grail of these races is being in a good group all the way through here that's evenly matched, that's going fast.
Working well together. What you don't want to be is get in a group here that's unmotivated, no one's pulling, everyone wants to draft, and what happens is everyone's average speed just slows down. And because this is a kind of race, it's more of a war of attrition than people attacking each other. I mean, there's definitely been people that have gone solo for a while or whatever, but what happens is mostly it just comes down to people kind of cracking, later on in the race. I would say the only exception to what we were just talking about with the climb is if for whatever reason you're wanting to go for the KOM prize. There is a KOM prize. I don't know. I think it's like a bottle of Patron or something, because it's sponsored by Patron. So and Glory. I mean, of course, it's cool to like for your age group to win the KOM.
Do you ever do the criteriums and they do the one lap preems and they call those the Potato Head Awards? Yeah. So
it's kind of like that. So, but I mean, that's very specific kind of thing, and most people in this race, I don't think, care too much about the KOM prize. So, but if you're a good climber, a strong climber, this race isn't necessarily super well designed for you. So you could, do well in the KOM competition if you were to just slam it up the first climb and then on the way back as well, because they take your time. They have a chip time for those two sections.
Oh, okay. So there are time segments.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, technically, it doesn't play into
the
result of the end, but they do in the award ceremony. They'll bring you up for the KOM podium. But I mean,
And these will be the people that are like, I died at 1,000 deaths in
Yeah,
the last 40 miles, but I got the KOA.
Exactly. And so it's like, well, depends on what you're going for, but
Right.
the real glory, I think, is getting through this thing efficiently and effectively and having a good result for you.
Yes. Yeah. So just wrapping up the training, sweet spot, simulation rides, being able to go as hard as you can we're contradicting ourselves, but, being able to go as hard for the 30-minute climb. And then, we have previously podcasted, you kind of concentrate on your CTL, raising your training load with sweet spot training approximately 1 to 2 weeks before the race, and then like tapering down in. You could either, if you have a really good build going, if this is your A race, you want to probably try to do a 2-week taper. If this is just another race, you still want to take probably a rest week leading into it. And so
it's going to be interesting how I will be feeling after Steamboat Gravel, because Steamboat Gravel is like
2 weeks
2 weeks ahead before it, and so it might actually play into my favor if I taper correctly. But
if you do if you do 8-9 hours on that August 18th and then take a good complete recovery the following week, and then on the weekend, maybe do like a 3-4, maybe. Actually, so I usually like to do half of the upcoming race. So Rebecca's for you is going to be 5, so 2.5 hours, but do it at a good clip, race-specific intensity, and that's what all I would do. Other than
so take the full week off after Steamboat.
Not like all week, like the whole week. I would,
just
Steamboat is Sunday, so Monday, Tuesday off or active recovery rides. Maybe do some. That would be, and then Wednesday, if you feel recovered, do your 3x10 for the climb. Yeah. For the climb here, 3x10. Then maybe like just zone 2 on Thursday. I know, zone 2. And then maybe like off Friday. Then Saturday you do that 2.5 hour simulation ride. And when you do that simulation ride, I would look to achieve intensity factors of like 0.88, 0.92 for you. And then if RPI is going to be your last event of the season, you're not going to make yourself any faster from training more. You're only going to slow yourself down if you try to gain fitness. So Sunday is going to be zone 2 or off, a recovery day Monday, maybe even Tuesday. Do like a tune-up workout Wednesday. Thursday is maybe like endurance. Off Friday, opener Saturday. Yeah. That's it. I just designed your training plan for the 2 weeks in between Steamboat and RPI. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think we've kind of covered everything we needed to. Again, it's a pretty specific sort of event breakdown, but I think Rebecca's is getting to be pretty big, and there's not a lot of information like this out there on this race, and so I think it'd be hopefully helpful for people out there.
I hope so. And if you are doing another gravel race that we've sparked a question for, let us know. Forum, show notes, however, help at. And I
think that's it.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, thanks everyone for listening. We really appreciate it. As a reminder, next Thursday, we're going to do a Ask a Fast Cat Q&A session. So if you have any questions about this, that'd be a great chance to ask. You can ask in our forum. It can be on any subject, anything we've podcasted about, or any training, anything that has come up for you that we can help you with. Go ahead and just ask, and we'll do our best to answer.
Cool. And best of luck in the rest of the training and racing, and for all of you coming out to Steamboat, come say hi. We'll be there.
We'll see you there.
Yeah, it'll be good.
Yeah.
I'm excited and nervous. I haven't ridden that long in a long time, so
it's going to be great.
Yeah, it's going to be real fun. All right. Well, thanks
all right,
again.
everyone. Thanks.